listen to Playboys, and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio.
And I'm Doc G. Welcome, everybody. This is Jimmy Deal Celebrity Spotlight Show. Tonight, we have a really great special guest for you, Mr. Music, Norman Nite. Welcome to the Jimmy Deal Show.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Norman. How are you?
Well, I'm terrific, and it's so great to be with you guys. You know, you're doing a terrific job in enlightening the fans about this wonderful music called rock and roll, and it's a pleasure for me to be with you tonight.
Absolutely. I want to congratulate you on your latest book, The House That Rock Built, all about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tell us about putting this great book together.
Wow. Well, this actually has been a labor of love for me because I first got involved with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in 1983 when I got a phone call in the summer of '83 from Leslie Gore, of all people, and she told me there was going to be a meeting going on in Manhattan. They'd like me to attend, and it's going to be about maybe building a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I was curious about it, so I went to that first meeting, and it was nice. There was a nice group of people that were there. But I looked around the room and I didn't see anybody there that could really be instrumental in making a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happen. And so what happened was I went to a couple of meetings and then I was going to bow out. And I was informed in January of '84 that Ahmet Ertegun and Seymour Stein and John Hammond and some of the real legends, John Landau, the big names in the rock and roll business were involved in this, and I thought, maybe this is going to happen. So I got involved. We worked for a lot of years. Finally, on May 5th of 1986, after working a very, very long time, Cleveland was designated as a site for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And through the years, I kept copious notes on all the meetings that we had and everything else like that. And I thought, my niece and nephew kept prodding me. They kept saying, Uncle Norm, why don't you do something and tell the story about how the Hall of Fame came to be? I thought about it, and I said, why not? So 6 years ago, actually more than that, so 7 years ago in 2015 is when I made a trip to New York, and I met with my agent, and we talked about maybe doing a book. And to make a long story short, after a lot of meetings and everything else like that, we did finally sign a contract with Kent State University Press. And we worked for a long period of time with my terrific writer, Tom Farron, who worked with me on the book, a great writer. And then we got this woman involved, Janet McCosker, who had some fabulous pictures that she was able to share with us for the book. And then I contacted my good friend, Stevie Van Zandt, and asked him if he would be so kind as to write the foreword. And he said yes. So all the pieces started falling into place, and the book finally did come out 2 years ago, and I'm very, very proud of the book. I've written a lot of other books, the Rock On series, which is kind of interesting. My very first book came out, Rock On, in November of '74, and that was the very first book having to deal with rock and roll. And now you go to a bookstore, you'll see hundreds of titles, but Rock On was the very first book that came out in '74. But I'm very proud of my Rock On series and the Rock On Almanac and all the other books that I've had a chance to write. But this is the one that pleases me the most because it tells the true story, how and why Cleveland got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right. Now, why Cleveland and not New York and Memphis and Los Angeles? What made Cleveland so special?
Well, the initial thing and the history of it is Cleveland, Ohio was a site in March 21st, 1952, that Alan Freed had the very first rock and roll show called the Moondog Coronation Ball. And that was the very first rock and roll show that occurred. And that was 70 years ago last month. 70 years ago that the very first show was held. And also, so a lot of the people in New York, the powers to be, they knew about Alan Freed. They knew about how he was the father of rock and roll, how he coined the phrase and everything else, how he got his start in Cleveland, Ohio. But when it really came down to it, as they say, money talks. And when they started talking to various cities about being able to raise the money, the Cleveland group worked so hard at being able to put the dollars together to get the project underway and finally breaking ground in 1985. And it was the enthusiasm and the spirit of the people in Cleveland and being able to raise the money, and also the history that Alan Freed going back to Cleveland, Ohio.
Right. Now, you used to listen, right, to Alan Freed when you were growing up, right? And tell us about when you were growing up, the music artist that you used to listen to and what influenced you to do radio.
Well, when I was a young man here in Northern Ohio, let's see, Alan Freed went on the air in Cleveland on WJW in 1951. And I was like at that particular time, like a 10-year-old and listening. But the music he was playing, they called it rhythm and blues, race music and everything else. It was just infectious. It was exciting. There was something to it. And he had his Moondog show on. And as I said, I never heard anything like that before. So I was listening to this great music, and every single thing that he would talk about, whenever he would have a group come on, or he would talk about a group, he always gave some background about the guys, where they were from, or how they got their name, or anything else. And I started copying this information down, and I never knew what I was going to do with it one day. But eventually, as I grew older and everything else, and when I finally got into radio myself, I started using this information to not only tell the story about a song, but being able to talk about I would always point out the lead singer. I'd always say Larry Chance and the Earls, Vita Pacone and the Elegants, Earl Lewis and the Channels. Before the people, all they did was they would just mention the name of the group. They never mentioned the lead singer. But what I was doing was every single time I zeroed in on the lead singer, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, and so that people knew that voice, Jimmy Beaumont and the Skyliners, whoever it was that you were listening to, Jimmy Gallagher and the Passions, and people got to know who these people were. It wasn't just a name on a label, and that's what I took pride in being able to do, and being able to share this information with people about rock and roll, and that's what I was very, very happy to be able to do.
Right. Now you also were in the military, right? And you tell us about that. And you still continue to work as a DJ and stuff like that, and then eventually came to New York City in 1973.
Well, the interesting thing about that, while I was in the military, I was stationed at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and I had a project that I had in college. I did a 15-minute tape in college that won me an A on the history of rock and roll. And what I thought I would do is be able to expand this and try to be able to convince some record label in New York City to be able to put it out as an album. And what happened was I would go into the city wearing my Army uniform, my officer, and they always thought that they would see me because they thought this was a government project. So I finally settled in with the Laurie Records, Bob and Gene Schwartz, the owners of the label, and I told them about my idea, that I had this idea for the history of rock and roll, and this is like 1966. So they went along with it, and I started securing the rights to use 15 or 20 or 30 seconds of a song from these various labels, and they all cooperated because they thought it was a project for the government. So what happened was I was able to record the album on Laurie Records, and my first exposure with it was January 22nd, 1968, when I appeared on the nationally syndicated Mike Douglas show with Bobby Darin, Leslie Gore. That's where I met Leslie Gore and Guy Marks, the comedian. And we debuted, and I'll never forget what Bobby Darin said. He said, his album is selling more than mine, which was not so, but he kind of like made a joke about it. But the album came out, and it kind of like got me national exposure way back then, when you're talking over 50 years ago, to be able to be on national television. And that's the things for me. And it was a wonderful thing for me to be able to say. And then later on in 1975, we put together a compilation album on Columbia Records called Rock On, which used the cover of my book on the cover on Columbia Records. And I was very, very thrilled to say, you know what? I had an album on Laurie Records, and I had an album on Columbia Records with my name on it. And even though I'm not a vocalist or anything else, I'm very proud of those two labels.
Amazing. Tell us about WCBS-FM in 1973, coming to New York City and working on one of the very few oldie stations in the country at that period in time, right?
Well, Jimmy, the reason I got to CBS-FM, believe it or not, is because of Little Richard, and I will amplify on that. When I was in Cleveland in 1970, 71, 72, I offered a show called the Honor Roll of Hits. because I would go out and interview people, and I would put together a 1 hour show with using the music and everything else. And we were offering it to radio stations around the country. We had a couple of stations in Canada that were running it and everything else like that. And I wanted to get it into bigger markets. And I'll never forget, that was in the early part of 1973. I went and I contacted John Guerin, who was a program director in Philadelphia of the CBS owned oldie station there. And I wanted him to be able to run the show. And he says, you know what? I'm being transferred over to CBS FM in New York. I said, "Well, can I call you when you get there?" He said, "Sure." So I called him up and I said, "Look, Richard Nader is doing a show at Madison Square Garden on Friday. I think it was March 2nd, 1973. His regular oldie show that he put together. And I said, the headliner on that show was Little Richard. And I said, I'll tell you what, I got a 1 hour show that I interviewed Little Richard playing all his hits. If you buy that show for me and run it on the air, and then what happens is if you like it, you can buy the rest of the shows. If you don't, what you just invested in one show." He said, "Fine." So he sent me a check for, I think it was $100. It was something very, very trivial. But at that time, you could fly on an airplane for like $80. So I bought an airline ticket because I wanted to hear my show on the air. I flew into New York City, stayed at the Americana Hotel on 6th Avenue or 7th Avenue. And I, on that Thursday night, I think it was like 10 o'clock at night, they ran my show on CBS. And I sat in a room listening on the radio saying, wow, there's my Little Richard special on CBS FM. So the very next day on Friday, I called John Guerin and I said, "What'd you think of the show?" He said, "It was good." And he says, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm here in New York. I flew in." He said, "Why don't you come by the office?" I came by the office and we sat and we talked. He said, "Listen, our all-night guy, Ed Osborne, is going on vacation next week. Would you be interested in doing his vacation shift?" I said, "Oh, of course." So I went to do his vacation shift. And while I was on the air for about 3 days, he offered me Ed's job. And I started on CBS FM a few weeks after that, at the early part of April 1973. And we were doing an all-night show until it was around May 5th or 6th or so. Bobby Wayne was doing the 6 to 10 p.m. show on CBS FM at that time. And because there was a problem, he was let go and they put me in that slot. And I was on the air around 6 to 10 p.m. on CBS FM from that point on, from May of 1973. But I have to give credit. If it hadn't been for the Little Richard special, I never would have been in New York.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and you were the first one really to do Doo-Wop, right, on Sunday nights?
Yes, I had my show on Sunday night called the Night Train Show. And and we were featuring all the Doo-Wop music. We premiered on Easter Sunday of 1973 at 11 o'clock. And my first record was the Woo Woo Train by the Valentines. Wow. And we were on the air for 1 hour, and it caught on. And then we expanded to 2 hours, 3 hours. Then I started doing interviews, bringing people in. I had Dion, all the other people, at Johnny Maestro, all the people were coming on the show. And before you know it, it was I believe it was 4 hours we were on Sunday nights. And I always had an hour that we had the original teenagers come by, all the Platters, Tony Williams, everybody came on that show. And it was a great thing for me to be able to get these people to talk, just like you guys are doing when you get people coming on the show. So it was a wonderful experience for me, having an opportunity to have all these people, because most of them lived in the city. So it was very easy to get them. So every single Sunday on the Night Train show, I would wind up having a different guest for an hour talking about their career and their music.
Oh, amazing. And also, I want to ask you about one of the interviews that you did. I know that's very near and dear to your heart is Bill Haley in the Comments. Tell us about that interview.
Well, Jimmy, I'll tell you something which I'm very, very honored with. When you look at the legends of rock and roll, and of course, Bill was there before all of them, because, with the Saddlemen and everything else. I mean, he was getting his start in 1951, 52 with songs like Crazy Man, Crazy, and all the other songs like that. So to have an opportunity to sit down and spend time with Bill Haley, spend time with Chuck Berry, spend time with Little Richard, spend time with Bo Diddley, spend time with Fats Domino, spend time with all these, Jackie Wilson, all these people. I mean, when I'm talking spending time, I'm talking several hours or maybe several occasions, or when they would come to visit me when I was living in Cleveland, they would come to my home and everything else. You know, how many people can you say had an opportunity to sit with and spend time with these legends? And not only that, to interview them and have these tapes. And I listened to them because they've all been transferred over to CD. We're hoping one day to do something with it with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I'd love to be able to have the people have a chance to sit down and listen to Bill Haley, listen to Chuck Berry, listen to Fats Domino, listen to these people talk about their lives, their careers, how these things, because they're all gone. And to have that opportunity to be able to meet with them, you know, I don't know what to say about that, except that I feel very, very blessed. Very blessed.
Absolutely. Doc G, what do you have for Mr. Music, Norman Knight?
Well, first of all, let me comment because I'm very thankful because of the people you interviewed. They're all legends, and yourself that you're here. So that's why I wore my thankful shirt. But I mean, your career was amazing, right? You just met so many great people. So many people know you. I just want to make a comment from my friend John Terlizzi, who I was just talking to. He said that you said something about the chessmen, and you explained a little bit about who the chessmen can. Can you expand on what you said? Do you remember what you said about the chessmen?
The chessmen.
He said something about the chessmen became somebody else, and I'm like, I didn't know that. And I like Norman knows. I'm like, I'll ask him, but I don't know what to ask him.
No, I'm not. Doc, you got me on this with a chessman. I'm trying to. Was that a group? I mean, because I'm not familiar with that.
He said you said it. Maybe he was another DJ. I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know.
Maybe we were talking about another group and he misunderstood.
It could be. It could be. Yeah, that could be too. Like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't really know. But you know, everybody knows who you are.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what, guys, listen, I'm going to tell you something.
Living legend.
I reflect back and I look back. I'm 81, you know, and I reflect back and I look back and I say to myself that number one, to have an opportunity to be able to do national television way before anyone. When you can, like I said, when I can say that we go 54 years ago, that you made, how many people can say they made national television 54 years ago? Okay, so that's number one.
Amazing.
Having an opportunity.
Oh, he said
54 years when you made national television. Then publish 8 books on rock and roll. Be able to put albums out. Be able to be on 40 national television shows. To be in the movie, rock and roll movie Joey. To be able to twice, which was so honored by the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle, which is the most worked crossword puzzle in the United States. And on 2 different occasions, I was a question in the Sunday New York Times, rock on author, answer night. And when it happened the first time, my boss at CBS was floored. She says, now I know you've really made it. And then it happened again. So when you, and then, like I said, and then I hosted a show we called it Saturday in the Park when I first got to New York in July of 1973 at Central Park. And you can look it up. Because I still have the clippings from the New York Times, the Daily News, the Post, Village Voice. I hosted a show. We had about 60 acts. Look, if I read to you who was on the bill, you wouldn't believe. And the show drew 50,000 fans in Central Park, Sheep Meadow, in July of 1973. I remember rock and roll. Go to the library and look that up on the thing. So when you could say you hosted the largest oldies show ever, 50,000 people, when you were in the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle, when you had a chance to do national television 54 years ago, when you had a chance to write books, when you had a chance to meet people from Chuck Berry to John Lennon to the Bee Gees to all the other people that you had a chance to meet. You spent Ed Sullivan. When I had a chance to spend time with Ed Sullivan and his wife at the Delmonico Hotel, where he lived on 59th and Park way back when, and you sat in his house, in his apartment, and talked to him and got the stories about how he booked the Beatles, how he booked Elvis, how he booked all these other acts, everything. So when you are able to look at that, you say to yourself, my, how fortunate you have been. And I feel very, very lucky. and I'm very, very happy to be able to think that I was able to do something like that.
Yeah.
Well, we're lucky to have you. But before Jimmy says anything, I got a comment first, and then I've got another comment, and I want to make a comment. John says it was Sha-na-na. Jerry Petito says hello because she's a good friend of ours. And I wanted to comment about DJs that go from one area to the next. It could either be a blessing or a curse, because you can have the new family that loves you and welcomes you and really enjoys your stuff. And then you can have them not like you so much. They always loved you. Everywhere you went, people loved you, and you know that. So I want to go with them comments right now.
Well, you know what, Doc? Here's the thing, too. The people that, you got to understand, when I first arrived in New York City in March of 1973 with one suitcase in hand, and I was sitting in my hotel room, and that old expression, like, what am I doing here? I was looking out the window of this great city of Manhattan and saying to myself, I do not know one single person in this city. And yet, because I had the desire to be able to make something of myself, I had a chance to meet people. I had a chance to be able to meet artists. I had a chance to be able to get my first book done, Rock On. I've had a chance to be able to get my shows done and all the other things. And the people that I hung around with were just regular people. I never cared to be just saying you want to hang around with the A-list people, the stars and everything. I just like people, and most of my friends, we hung around together, and you know, it was amazing. And the years that I spent there in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I reminisce a lot with some of my friends today about the good old days that we. You know, I was just talking to a good friend of mine, Frankie Lanziano. Frankie Lanz, he did the Royal New York Doo-Wop show. And I called Frankie up a week or so ago because it was April 22nd, 1978 that we met for the very first time. And he in our first meeting, he wanted me to MC. He wanted to do a show called the Royal New York Doo-Wop show. And I told him, you got a lot of personality. I think what you should do is you should host a show on your own. And I got a good friend of mine, Tony DeLauro, who was at that time representing Chubby Checker. And Tony produced shows for Richard Nader. And they got involved with the whole thing. And they did their very first. But here was the fun thing we talked about. It was June of 1978 at the Beacon Theater. They did their very first Royal New York Doo-Wop show. They did 2 shows. I was out of town. I flew back in. The second show started at 11 o'clock at night. Okay. And it went till 3 o'clock in the morning. After the show was over with, we had a party at a club till about 4:30 in the morning. After that, we went to an after hours club till 8 o'clock in the morning. And my friend and I were laughing, Frankie and I were laughing and said, can you believe it? Back at that particular time, we used to hang out all hours of the night and do things. Nowadays, you're in bed by 8 o'clock.
That's so true.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, what about all the Elvis shows that you did? I mean, I know you're a big Elvis fan. Of course, you had Elvis, an American music legend, which became an annual event and heard on radio stations everywhere. Tell us about Elvis and how he changed music when he came on the scene.
Well, the interesting thing, Jimmy, for me, because it was ironic because it was last Friday, the 29th of April, that I went and I contacted Jack Soden, is the CEO of Graceland, Elvis Presley Enterprise, Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
And I sent him an email. I said, Jack, do you know that it was Friday, April 29th, 1983, that I made my first trip to Graceland. And we met 39 years ago to the exact date. And he was shocked me that I remembered. I said, yep. And I brought a group of people from New York down to Memphis for the weekend to go to Graceland and everything else. And when I was there, and I was so taken aback by the whole thing with Elvis, and because I always cared about him, but to be able to be there, be at the house, meet Jack, and be taken out to the Sun Record Studios, everything else like that, I had to come back, and I came back the second time, and I started making notes about the stories that I was meeting all the people that knew Elvis, which led me to put together my show, which I eventually did, called Elvis, an American Music Legend. It was 8 hours long, and we ran it on CBS FM numerous times, and eventually we wound up running it on many other radio stations around the country. And in fact, several years ago, I gave the the entire rights to the whole 8-hour show to Elvis Presley Enterprises. They now own it. They can do whatever they want with it. But my infatuation with everything in Memphis and the whole thing prompted me to work on being able to, and a good engineer friend, Mark Wiener at CBS, worked with me diligently to put the whole thing together. But my contribution to the Elvis mystique is the 8-hour show that many people have heard it and loved it and everything else. And I'm very, very proud of that. Elvis, an American music legend, and the true story about Elvis from 1954 to 1977.
Great. And you also did a broadcast from the Pyramid. I remember that. And I got to spend some time with you with Cousin Brucey while you were broadcasting at the Graceland Plaza along with Joe McCoy and George Klein, which was an awesome time.
You got a lot of
I'll never
information
forget.
there, Jimmy.
So, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that. That was a great time. So what about the Beatles and the British invasion? Tell us about how music changed with the British invasion.
Well, you got to marvel at what they were able to accomplish, and for me anyway, my whole thing with the Beatles is my encounter in November of '74 with John Lennon. In November of '74 at the Beacon Theater, they were doing Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the play. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I was out in front of the Beacon Theater with a microphone greeting the various people. And you had, different people, Peter Boyle, Mary Travers, you had Marvin Hamlish, all the people were coming in to the show. And then Lennon came in. I was able to talk to him rather briefly. And then after the show, they had a party going on at the Hippopotamus, which was a club on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And Lennon sought me out, and because I was carrying at that time my brand new copy of my book, Rock On. And we sat down, and he sat down, and he was looking at it, and he loved American rock and roll. And he loved Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and all these people like that. And he said, "You got to get me a copy of this book." I said, "Sure. Why don't you sign it?" So he wrote Rock On, drew a caricature, wrote John Lennon, everything else. And that became the first of signatures, because after that, I was able to get Ringo and George Martin and Keith Richards and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and Fats Domino and you name it. They all have, this is the holy grail of rock and roll books, because every single, Les Paul, you name it, every single person has signed this book. Even people like Johnny Mathis, Tony Bennett, you name it. But anyway, but all he wanted to do was talk about Cleveland, rock and roll, American rock and roll, all the different performers and everything else like that. And I was so moved at the fact that how he, and along with the Beatles, well, when they first broke into this country, what were they doing? They were doing American rock and roll songs, Roll Over Beethoven, all the other songs, rock and roll music, everything, Chuck Berry, all the other songs, everything else like that. So they set a standard, and it's so hard to believe that already. Look at 1964. To me, it seems like yesterday, but look at how long ago the people, even with that era of music with the Beatles. So their influence on music and everything else is second to none. So they're truly legendary performers, and they're right there at the top of the group.
Yeah, when you were putting together to get artifacts for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, wasn't Yoko Ono one of the first to come on board with some of John's stuff?
I didn't do the collecting of that stuff, Eric. That was left off to different individuals to be able to do. And but I know, yeah, she was because they were able to get things from her that opened up the door to other people to be able to make contributions to. Because if you read my book, The House That Rock Built, and you'll see how when they got the idea to open up the Hall of Fame, they thought that they had all this material to put on display, and in reality, they really had nothing. Because all they had a lot of records, CDs, microphones, everything else, but nothing of any consequence that you want to build a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame around. But they worked very, very hard at being able to get her and the other people to come on board and donate stuff, and that's what made all the difference in the world.
Right, and at the groundbreaking, there were so many celebrities too. I mean, you had like Billy Joel was with you, right? I mean, so many different celebrities accompanied you with the groundbreaking, which was amazing.
Yeah, it truly was. You know, it's amazing though. The thing for me, anyway, is it because I've been fortunate, and I mean that truly. I've been fortunate enough to meet just about every single. In fact, when I listen to CBS FM, or if I listen to Sirius, not CBS FM anymore. I'm sorry. When I listen to Sirius XM, the 50s channel, and I listen in a given hour. In a given hour, about 98% of the songs that I hear are performers that I knew or spent time with.
Wow.
And because you are deeply rooted in meeting and spending time and sharing stories and having them tell you things about different songs and everything else like that, that when you would meet like Billy Joel, I remember one time I was at the Stage Deli and he was there with his wife at the time, Christy Brinkley, and he saw me and he called me over and we had a chance to sit and talk and everything else. And what do they want to know? Tell me about so and so. Tell me about this one. How is this one though? You know, and that's what's amazing for me because they all want to know because in many cases they never had a chance to meet these people. They knew of them. Many of them they did meet later in life, but a lot of them they never did. So they wanted to know what was so and so really like. What was this one really like? You know, and fortunately you're able to share those stories with them.
Right. Now, WCBS went off the air, around 1980? Why do you think that happened? Why did you think oldies really disappeared in New York and it went to that format? I think it was Jack that it went to at that time.
Well, you know, everybody thinks that they have the right answer for something new and the trends, how they're going to go and everything else like that. And so when they decided to be able to end it all and then change formats, call it Jack, whatever it was and everything else like that, they thought that they were making the right decision, but they found out that the listenership of CBS FM was very, very loyal and even to the roots of rock and roll and everything else. And that's what they wanted. And they didn't want to be able to have this other music be played, you know. So, you know, it's like anything else. You have a favorite music and sound and everything else, and you stay with it. And you don't want to be able to change. This is what keeps you going. You just love the music, and so fortunately, they were able to drop that format and come back to where it began for them and everything.
Yeah, I miss the oldies though, and I miss all the great DJs like yourself. I mean, New York radio has not been the same since you guys left.
Well, you know, the thing is, which is so great that so many people have recorded our shows. So many people I talk to, they have, I got about 100 cassettes of your shows, and I listen to all the time, especially when you did the top 20 countdown, and you did these various things, and I say, you know, I think I did the first top May of 1982. I did it on Saturday and Sunday for 2 hours from 5 to 7. And I think the first year I highlighted was 1966, and the next day on Sunday was 1961, where I would do the top 20 songs of that date from that particular year. And that's what people love. They love. See, the whole thing with me and my whole project, and when I did my show, here's my concept in my mind, what I wanted to do to my listeners that were out there. I wanted to freeze time and suspend reality. That was my motivation. When you came into the show that I was doing, I wanted to take you back. So I want to freeze time and suspend reality. I want you to be able to go back to that time in your life that made you happy. And if you were too young to appreciate it, then you can appreciate the kind of music that we're listening to that got us interested in this thing called rock and roll. And that's what it's all about.
Sure.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I got a couple more questions for you, but we're past the 30-minute mark, and I want to ask how you're feeling, but also...
Doc, we could do about another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to...
Okay, beautiful. Okay. Well, I'm just going to ask a couple more questions, and actually, before we end, I just want to ask if you can do a sweeper for Jimmy and I, just basically say who you are, and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio, but you don't have to do that now. You can do that when we're ending. Okay. One of the questions is from my friend Connie Munson, who's a singer-songwriter. She said, did you ever meet Bob Neal? Her first contact with Sony was through Bob Neal.
No, I never did. Never did.
Okay. And the other question is from my friend John Terlizzi. Norm, what was your favorite doo-wop group? That's hard. That's freaking hard. There's so many that were so great.
There's so many great ones, but two of them at the top for me would be Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers and Dion and the Belmont.
Yeah, they're two. Yep.
But for pure ballads, Flamingos. You know,
Flamingos.
The album Flamingo Serenade and everything else like that, the harmonies that they had and everything else like that. Oh my God. I mean, the thing is with those songs, those albums, the music, you sit back and it just, regardless of what your day has been like, when I was talking to Chuck Berry, he said to me one time, he says, music is a food for mood. And depending upon the mood, the music will enhance it. And I got to share a quick story with you guys.
Go ahead.
Brought up the name of Chuck Berry, and that is, I brought Chuck Berry into Cleveland to do a show. It's ironic because Cleveland got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on May 5th, 1986. On May 5th, 1968, okay, you just turned those two. I got together with a bunch of my friends in Cleveland at the Cleveland Arena, which was the site of the Moondog Coronation Ball in 1952. And we did a show called I Remember Rock and Roll. And it starred Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, the Shirelles, and the Coasters. 4 groups like that I got all 4 of them for $7,500.
Wow.
Right? Now, what happened, it was a Sunday night, and what happened at the show, Chuck Berry was getting ready to go on stage, and I got a call to go to the box office, and I went to the box office, and I found out that Fats Domino's band was there at the Cleveland Arena, but he was still in New York. And I said, oh, my goodness. So I went up to Chuck Berry, and I said, hey, Chuck, Fats isn't here. Can you make an announcement, or can you do an extended version of your show? No way, man, no way. I said, oh, my goodness. So he went up on stage, and he was doing it, and I was just dreading when he come off stage, how I'm going to get up on stage and tell the people that that's it. And he must have taken a little sympathy for me, because he looked at me and he went and he stopped when he was playing. He was strumming his guitar. Says, there's something I want to say. I will have to continue to play. The Fat Man ain't going to be here, but you're going to really care. And he did, and he went into another 20 minutes of the show. Well, needless to say, the house went crazy. Then we went across the street. I booked a suite at the Holiday Inn for all of us to go. And Fats finally showed up. So what I did was I took Fats Domino and I took Chuck Berry, and my wife drove, and we went to my house. And we got there probably it was 1 o'clock in the morning. We had a piano there, and Fats was on a piano, and Chuck was sitting on a chair with a guitar on his lap. We had sandwiches and beer and everything else. And for 2 hours, the two of them in my house, jamming and playing music and everything else like that. And that's where Chuck and I really hit it off, because after that, he invited me that summer to come to Berry Park in Wentzville, Missouri, his home. And I stayed with him, and that's where we became very, very good friends. But can you imagine, you have these two guys in your house hanging out like that? I mean, does it get any better than that?
No, I can't. You're right, Norm. But here's the thing, too. My friend Pepe Castro from the Blues Magoos and the band Ab Balance in the 80s, he always says to me, he says, why do you think that, and I'm going to ask you this question, why do you think that a lot of artists became one-hit wonders? Was it the marketing? Was it the music? Or was it just the way the DJs would play the music? Because a lot of them had 2 or 3 hits, maybe an album out, but they only got a one-hit wonder out of it.
There could be a lot of reasons for that. First of all, they weren't getting the promotion. Maybe the songs weren't as good. When they talk about some of these artists, when they'll say that the Elegants one-hit wonder, Vito Pacone and the Elegants, they had a lot of other songs. They never charted. And when you look at like some of these other groups, Willie Winfield and Harptones, they never charted one song on Billboard. And yet look at the classic songs that they had. So, the whole thing is that there were a lot of different reasons. In some cases, they weren't getting the right promotion. Sometimes the DJs weren't cooperating. Sometimes, there were a multitude of reasons, but the thing is that through the years, the other songs that these people recorded finally surfaced, and people started playing them, and they became standards. And people now know about all these songs and everything else like that. But again, these artists, it was and what's so sad right now is the fact that we're losing so many, and it's not even funny over the past couple of years to think about how many. When you look at all these great lead voices, Johnny Maestro, he's gone, and Jimmy Beaumont is, and that's another thing I got to share with you, which I had on a show one time in Cleveland. It was in 1982. I had Johnny Maestro and the Brooklyn Bridge and Jimmy Beaumont and the Skyliners. And I was backstage, and Jimmy and Johnny were there. And I said to them, by the way, did you guys ever sing together on stage? And they said, no. I said, can I get you to come up on stage and do a song? And they said, yeah. Now, I had someone recording the whole thing on cassette, okay? So what happened is they weren't to sing You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. So they went into about 40 seconds of the song, and the guy forgot. I got the first 40 seconds, and they forgot to flip the cassette over. So the rest of it, so the one time that Johnny Maestro and Jimmy Beaumont sang together on stage in Cleveland in 1982, You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, I got 40 seconds of it. So, I mean, but again, again, with all these groups that I mentioned and everything else, all these great lead voices, Lenny Coker, the Chimes, in fact, is coming up. It's already 7 years because I was in New York on May 7th or so of 7 year 2015. And we were out having dinner, and somebody said, hey, did you hear Lenny Coker passed away? I said, really? But I mean, all these great singers that we heard, Dick Sando, all of them, they're all gone. All gone.
Right. Yeah, you did the first rock and roll revival show too in Cleveland, right? With the Shirelles.
Well, that's what we talked about. Yeah, I remember rock and roll. Like I said, that Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, Little Rich. I mean, the Shirelles and the Coasters. That May 5th of 1968. Yeah.
68. Awesome. Well, Doc, what else do you have? Any final thoughts for Mr. Music, Norman Knight?
Well, I'm kind of like I mean, like I said, I'm enthralled about him as a person, and everybody like I said knows him, knows about him, loves him. And do you have any type of words for people starting out in the business? I mean, broadcasters, because
that'd be great.
I get that all the time. Do you have any words for can give them?
I'll leave this last thought for both of you guys and for anybody else that's listening. All right, the last thought, that is, aspire to inspire before you expire. Okay? Aspire to inspire before you expire. That should be your mantra in life.
I love that.
Right? And all I can say in closing, you guys, is thanks for the show and rock on.
If you can do a sweeper for us too, that would be great. Can you do one?
What's that?
Can you do a sweeper for
what
Jimmy?
Do you want me to say?
Just say, who you are, and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio, and I'll play it amongst the Doo-Wop and music.
Hi, this is Mr. Music Norman Knight, and you're listening to my good friend Jimmy Deal, and he's going to rock on with the greatest shows and the greatest songs of all time on Hamilton Radio. Rock on, buddy.
Thanks so much, Mr. Music Norman Knight. What an honor to have you. So happy you did the show.
Thank you so very, very much. And, send me a link on what went on. I'd like to watch it and everything else and where it's going to be so I can tell people about it, okay?
I'll put it
guys, thank you again, all right?
Thank you as well.
Thank you so much, Norm. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Wow, what a great show. Man, like I said, I don't want to keep him, Jimmy, but you can ask him questions all night long.
I know. I mean,
come
keep
on.
him on for hours. Really, I mean, the man has so much knowledge. He's met everybody in rock and roll and played everybody in rock and roll. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and every one of his books was at every one of the radio stations I've ever worked for as a reference. Rock On was in every studio. Everybody, if you needed information on music,
we got it here.
You pick up his book and see what was going on with the artist and the music and all that type of thing. So, Rock On.
I wanted to ask him a little bit about Dick Clark. We didn't get a chance to do that. And I want to ask him a little bit about Wolfman, Wolfman Jack.
Wolfman Jack, yeah,
Wolfman Jack, because he did the foreword to both books, one book and the other book. So I wanted to ask him about that, but it didn't get to it. But anyway, what a great show, Jimmy. Who we got coming up?
All right. Thursday, we have a show coming up at 7 o'clock, Doc. We have the original cover girl, Angel, from the original Cover Girls. She's going to be here. Of course, they had so many hits like Show Me, Promise Me, so many great songs because of you. I mean, one of the biggest groups in freestyle and disco music, the Cover Girls. I mean, and she is the original Cover Girl, and she does shows with the original Cover Girls. So we'll talk all about that. And also, we have Jimmy Rosia from the Brooklyn Bridge is going to be here Monday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and Stacey Ladisor will be here. Also, Karen Knotts, the daughter of Don Knotts. She's a comedian, and she's got a brand new book on her dad. We'll talk about that. And so many more, too, coming up in June and through the summer. So we'll keep you informed about all of that. So just keep tuned here to Doc G and myself here on Hamilton Radio.
I want to give a shout out to my friend Anna Bronstein, who is the producer of that new movie that I'm in. And it already had won a couple of awards. It's nominated for many, many awards, but it won a couple of awards already in a couple of film festivals. And I'm so excited and so happy to be part of that cast and crew. And all my friends are in there. And of course, Mike Dupree is alongside me, and he's trying to get me in other movies. I'm trying to get him in other movies. So, and we're trying to get Jimmy in other movies. And,
Sounds good. You guys were going to work on a video, right? You were telling me about some sort
We're doing a music video, hopefully soon, for Terry King of Terry King's Drifters,
right?
Which is new music. It's not his old doo-wop, like from the Drifters or the Drifters from the 70s. It's Drifters 80s type of music. More R&B, more soul, but very, very cool. Almost like a disco beat, but really, really cool. And good, and glad to be doing it for them too. So we're working on that. We're working on getting the new studio ready, which hopefully will be ready by, I would say, a few months. Give it a few months because we're still moving and there's a couple things we got to do yet, but about a few months we'll be ready to go. So I'm excited to where the future is for us now, Jimmy. I think that having these guests on, and John reached out to me. And he wants to give us Mel Carter and a couple other people. And listen, I said, John, be my guest. Anybody you want to bring to us,
sure,
we'll be more than glad to do it. It's not a problem. I know you'll be happy. But if it's during the day, of course, you'll be working and I'll have to get somebody else. But it's not a problem. I don't have a problem with that.
Exactly. I just want to tell everybody to pick up the, Mr. Music Norman Knight's book, The House
Go ahead.
Built. It's on Amazon. You can pick it up. You go to Mr. Music Norman Knight's website as well. It's available there. And I think it forwards you to Amazon. But anyway, it's a great book. And I hope everybody goes out and picks up a copy of this book because it's absolutely fabulous. A lot of great information on rock and roll in here. So it's a great book to have for reference. Yeah. And information on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. And so thank you so much, Doc. I want to also say hello to Cindy listening in Lake Ronkonkoma, my mom here in Brooklyn. I had Flora here in Brooklyn, also Trisha in Sun City, Florida. So many people out there listening. Tom, thank you so much, Tom. In fact, I had the pleasure of meeting Tom in person.
Yeah, you met Tom. Hey, tell me a little bit before you go. Tell me a little bit about our friend Wesley and Kathy Coleman.
Yeah,
and
also
the people you got to meet that I didn't.
Yeah, this past weekend I stopped by the Chiller show and I got to meet Wesley, and he was such a great guy, and he enjoyed the show so much, and he thanked me for being on. And I said, "You're always welcome here at Hamilton Radio." I said, "Come back anytime." He's such an awesome guy. I know. Also, Melissa Gilbert was there. I was trying to get Melissa Gilbert on our show, but she said she's got so much. She's got a brand new book coming out. I think it comes out on May 11th, but she said she's got so much press going on right now, but she said she'll keep it in mind. So we'll see what happens. I don't know, but it was great to meet her. And I saw Jamie Farr from Klinger from MASH rather. And, he was great. I had met him years ago at the PLJ Celebrity Cruise. And so it's been a number of years I'd seen him. So he looks fabulous and doing great. Loretta Swit was there, one of our people we had on Celebrity Spotlight.
Already had on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a great show. It was a great time. Also, I think Dave Hodge was there. I think you know him, right?
Yeah, we used to do a show with us. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's
like
interested
family.
in coming on
We're
the show.
Family, Dave and I. Yeah, Dave's a great guy. He's a funny comedian, a great guy, and he make you laugh.
Yeah, he's actually going out with a very good friend of mine who I've known for years. Her name is Tracy, and we got to hang out at the Chiller show as well. So that was fun. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. We missed you, Doc. Though I mean, that was the. I really
wanted to come, but if I didn't go to that wrestling thing, but anyway, Connie Munson, a good friend of mine, watches. I want to give a shout out to John Terlizzi, and of course Jerry Petito. I got to give her a shout out because she'll kill me if I don't.
Hey,
I don't
Jerry.
want to anybody.
Exactly.
And everybody's working to help, what we're doing, and we're trying to help what they're doing. So it's a great networking thing. And I again, I thank Norman Knight for coming here and just sharing some of them stories, because like I said, we could talk all night. Before you got here, Jimmy, we were already talking about some stuff.
I could imagine. Yeah, I know he wasn't feeling that well tonight, so
I know that's why I was being.
That's why we sort of let him go a little bit early than he was scheduled to be on. But it was great to have him on. And
what an incredible show, man!
Yeah,
what an incredible show.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And I'll catch you all Thursday night. Please join us 7:00 with Angel, the original cover girl. So that should be interesting. And I mean, it was one of the best groups in disco and freestyle and dance music, the cover girls, and they're still going, strong to this day. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope to catch you Thursday night. What
Thursday
time?
Thursday night, 7:00, Thursday night.
Okay. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.